Hi, welcome back to Deck This Out. What is Deck This Out? This is a fucking show where I get to show you a silly little deck. We get to make fun of it, and then you can play it. Am I gonna show you a gameplay of it? Aw, you're asking a lot of me now. We're talking about Runic Ice Barrier today. God, this deck is so fucking cool. Pun intended. What does this deck do? First off, it's a mid-range control-y type deck. Your main goal is just having so much card advantage over your opponent that your opponent just kind of gets shoved out of the game by just how much sheer numbers you have on them. You have multiple ways of just drawing out so many different cards outside of just the Runic engine by itself that you can just kind of keep having like 6 or so cards in your hand regardless of what you do, and still having ways to just kind of do whatever you want. So what's like the basic like combo game style for this deck? Well, you're going to start off by having a level 2 tuner, and you're just going to be using the runic monsters themselves as synchro material, seeing as most of the cards in your main deck are actually just tuners, and for good reason, because those are all usually really good combo starters. Any level 2/level 1 monster as your normal summon plus a runic spell is technically full combo. Starting that off, we'll start with the big names of this. Deep Sea Diva. Deep Sea Diva, if you do not know, actually is a really good combo piece in this deck because all it does is just summon a level 3 or lower Sea Serpent from your deck. This is perfect because this summons Hexa, Spirit of the Ice Barrier, making it effectively 3 extra copies. Hexa Spirit is basically the card that says whenever you want, you activate the effect, send a Ice Barrier from your deck to the grave, and then make its level the same level as that monster. The monster you normally be sending for this effect is Mirror Mage of the Ice Barrier. When it's flushed from deck, or anywhere actually, add any Ice Barrier card you want to your hand. Oh. Sorry, I had Winky. So what you can do at this point is search either Speaker, or if you already have Speaker slash the other card, aka Gorgeous. What Gorgeous is basically a free level 10. What it basically does is summon itself, and then when it's summoned, activates its effect to summon another Ice Barrier from hand or grave back to the field. How you would do this then is activate Hexa, send Mirror Mage, search Gorgeous, Gorgeous summon because you have control another Ice Barrier, and then summon back Mirror Mage. Mirror Mage has a second effect to it. When it's on the field, you can sacrifice a different monster on your field to summon 3 Ice Barrier tokens and gain a level for every token you summoned. This is very useful, actually. And you can make a level 8 off of that just by itself. But because we don't have anything really crazy at a level 8, we can also just go straight into Coral Dragon, which is also a draw when it's sent from the field to the grave. Meaning you can use Coral Dragon to go into Adamancipator Risen Dragite, or if you have Speaker, go into Ravenous Croco Dragon Architectus. The last word's always difficult to say. I'm sorry, I'm bipolar. I don't think that's it. So, what is the Runic package doing for this deck, besides being the free non-tuners? Well, obviously it's a draw engine to get to your pieces. You can start off with a basic line of just having your Runic cards draw you as many cards as you think you can get, and then after doing that, you just use your actual normal Ice Barrier cards to just start comboing off. What does an end board look like? Well, glad you asked. We're actually going to be usually ending on a negate of some variety, but the basic line of it will be using Herald as your free negate to protect from Nibiru, using Ravenous Croco Dragon to draw 4 because of the tokens, and then we just go into Lancia. Lancia is your big new monster boss, and he's very useful. What he basically says is when a monster is summoned to your opponent's field, you can special summon an Ice Barrier from your hand, deck, or grave. This is very good because usually, depending on what you have on the field, you can either A, go into a second Gorgeous, which Gorgeous will just grab you either Speaker or Hexa, both having their own different negates. But Gorgeous's main thing for this situation is it is a floodgate, making your opponent not able to activate effects of monsters in the graveyard. If you still have a Ice Barrier monster besides Gorgeous on the field at least. And if you have one when he's summoned, or just summoning a different monster off of him, you immediately activate the effect, and your opponent is immediately in danger. Snake Eyes cannot play through this effect. But if they still summon a second monster, you can also go into the other option, being General YuGiOh. This guy is very interesting, mostly because he is a walking skill drain that your opponent can interact with in a unique way. What he does is basically force your opponent to discard on resolve to resolve their monster effects, which is very good, especially against Snake Eyes. This basically shuts down their entire super extensive engine and forces them into having to discard extenders just to resolve their main effects. And in that position, it's a lot more difficult for them to actually fight you through your board. What Lancia also does when it's sent from your field that's face up to the graveyard, he activates his effect to summon a Ice Barrier synchro from your extra deck. And you have 2 options for this. Our first one is Trishula Zero Dragon of the Ice Barrier. What is Trishula doing here? Well, this form of Trishula banishes 3 on summon. That's really good. Not like normal Trishula's effect, which has its own unique position in this deck. Trishula Zero Dragon will be banishing 3 from the field. And then if they get through this Trishula, we go even further back into original Trishula, which banishes another card from the field plus another one from the hand and graveyard, meaning you are banishing your opponent out of the game. And the only deck that actually loses to Lancia by itself is exactly Fluandereeze. Funny thing about Flu though, they actually lose to another card in your deck called Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Xingying. What is Xingying doing here? Well, your opponent loses 100 attack for each banished card, and you gain 100 attack for each banished card. Ergo, Impin doesn't really matter, even if they activate and resolve his effect, because that is not a effect that activates. That's a lingering part of his effect. Plus his a part where if he's destroyed by card effect, he still banishes for the effect without actually activating. Ending up where if a card is banished because of someone attempting this on you, Xingying's effect goes off and you get to banish anything you want from the field or grave. This is very good against Snake Eyes, but also YuGiOh as well. YuGiOh also is not very fond of Shifter, fun fact. Wow, it's almost like all the best decks in the game are like graveyard centric in some way. Who would have thought? Can we ban Shifter, by the way? All right. The non-engine. Why am I choosing Dark Ruler and Triple Tactics Talent? Simple, actually. Regularly, you would just play Ash Blossom, stuff like that, but the decks that Ash Blossom currently beats by herself are actually not very good. In a situation where you're going up against primarily branded players, yes, you should probably be siding in Ash Blossom. However, in the position of the format that we're currently in, it's a lot more safer and more reasonable just to play Dark Ruler no more, negate your entire opponent's field of monsters, and then combo off from there. If it's Snake Eyes, they will try to activate Princess. If they activate Princess, you get to Tactics. Tactics lets you get more extenders, meaning you have way more ways to keep playing no matter what they do. Also, you have ways of just removing things from your field anyway because of Flashing Fire. A pretty nice line. The cards in the side deck are actually more other cards you can choose for the engine, more cards you can pick for like silly situations that come up, and other things like that. Most specifically, Revealer. Revealer is basically Deep Sea Diva, but you also have to discard for cost, which you think would be a bad thing, except she also has 2 bonus effects to her. Number 1, she is also, when she is summoned, your opponent cannot tribute summon if you have another Ice Barrier. Very useful card against tribute summon heavy decks like Monarch and Flu. Who would have thought? But her second effect is if you have an effect that revolves around an Ice Barrier discarding for cost, you can choose to just banish her instead. Very useful when it comes up, even if you don't see it too often. Wins over the Ice Barrier is another good card to play as well, because what it does is basically, it's a free 1-for-1 pretty much. If your Ice Barrier is negated on summon, you get to Wins over the Ice Barrier, tribute it, and then summon another Ice Barrier, meaning its effect is no longer negated. Hey.
This person's a giant nerd.
Heartwarming. A Latinx hated this tweet. On top of this, we also have Barrier Statue of the Torrent. Do you like Runic Stun? Sleipnir is actually a very interesting card to play, and I would actually recommend playing him over cards like Toad and stuff like that if I were to switch him out. If you normal summon Hexa and activate Hexa's effect and then chain a Runic card to it, they have 2 chances to negate Hexa, but because you control a Runic card and are attempting to summon a Runic monster, you now have 2 positions you are in. If they choose to negate Hexa, you immediately fusion summon Sleipnir. Sleipnir plus Hexa is a free level 10, aka immediate Lancia. If they choose to not negate Hexa, and choose to wait for you to summon the Runic, you can choose to summon Hugin. Hugin and Hexa are a free level 4, aka Herald, plus you chain Hugin 1 and Mirror Mage 2. They cannot negate Hugin unless they have Imperm anymore, meaning you have free access to Fountain. Very useful in a lot of games where it came up. General Win of the Ice Barrier. What does he do for the deck? He's actually really good going sec. And the most important reason is his summoning requirement. It is basically, once per turn, if your opponent controls a monster and you control an Ice Barrier, special summon it from your hand. If this card's normal or special summoned, search an Ice Barrier spell or trap. This is very useful because what he does then is search the revival spell or medallion. Either or, these are very extensively useful for the Ice Barrier lines. Freezing Chains being a beautiful revival spell, and medallion searching any Ice Barrier monster of your choice. Not once per turn, by the way. Medium of the Ice Barrier also does the same thing. If your opponent controls 4 or more cards than you do, Special summon this card from your hand. Your opponent can only activate one spell or trap per turn. What does this card beat? There's a cute little deck flying around called Runic Stun. Another cute little deck called Labyrinth that just sets 5 pass. Either or, they're only activating once per turn. And that shuts down so much of their deck. Next card after that is also another floodgate option, being Defender of the Ice Barrier. What does this card do? Well, it stops a little deck called Tenpai. What it does is it makes it to where your opponent cannot declare an attack if a monster attack is greater than this card's defense. So let's say they are playing Tenpai. The only monster they can attack with is Chandra. After that, there is no other card in their deck that gets rid of this card. They can't attack, can't do anything past that. They have a single attack. If they choose to synchro, they can't do anything past that point, especially because if they choose to synchro, you activate Lancia, and Lancia kills off their deck. Because if Defender's on the field, Lancia activate Resolves, summon Gorgeous. Their synchros can no longer be summoned back from the grave, meaning you just killed off their pop as well. Finally, like I said earlier, Ash Blossom is a very good card for you to play if you have a space, or if you just have one generically in your side. Both are very good options, and I would recommend doing both. Jewel and Lockbird is here as more of the floodgate of choice. Jewel's very good against certain decks. You already know what's like being roguely playable, but also a lot of meta decks are also playing really hard into this guy, mostly because they all really do like searching, including YuGiOh. If you droll a YuGiOh player, they can still end on things, but it's way worse than them not getting drolled. Cosmic Cyclone is a representation of any spell and trap hate that you wish to play. And finally, Evenly Matched. Blowout representation. Any blowout of your choice is a really good card. I would recommend playing a option of choice. But that's it. Do you like the deck? I do. Hey, can I finish the video?
No.
I hope you all enjoyed. I'm gonna go get beat now.